Well, hello everybody. I'm Gustavo Tolosa and I am here in LA with Chef AJ. I am her webinar host, and today she's going to make a very special recipe.
Hi everybody, welcome. I'm Chef AJ and I'm really excited to make you one of my very favorite desserts, pecan pie. I was the executive pastry chef for almost 5 years at Sante Restaurant on La Brea in Los Angeles, and I was known for my decadent desserts which contained no refined sugar. I used dates only to sweeten, no oil, no salt, and most of them didn't even have flour, and so most of them were and are gluten-free. So let's get started. Well, there's only one piece of equipment in this recipe, and it's really, really easy because you don't have to bake it, which is great if you live somewhere hot like I do and you don't want to turn your oven on. You will need a food processor fitted with what's called the S-blade, and you don't have to have a $300 Cuisinart. I used one that was, frankly, I got it at Walmart. It was about $79. It's the Oster, and it's fantastic. You just want a big enough one. You don't want to get the little tiny ones. I believe this is a 14 or a 16 cup one, but you need a pretty big one to process some of these dessert recipes that I'm going to show you. Believe it or not, there's only 2 ingredients in this recipe. Well, 3 if you use vanilla, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Dates and pecans. You know, pecan pie was actually invented in the late 1800s by the French in New Orleans, and it still remains a very popular dessert in the South and actually all around the world today. Georgia is the biggest producer of pecans, and did you know that it takes 11,600 pecans, if you stack them up, be as high as the Empire State Building? I know you couldn't live that long without knowing that little piece of information. So you need pecans and dates, and so what we do is we have them divided. We have 2 cups of pecans, which are going to go in the crust, and 3 cups in the filling. So I have pre-measured out 3 cups of pecans. You want to make sure that they're raw and unsalted, not roasted. Put them in your food processor fitted with the S-blade, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to process them into crumbs. I'm not going to keep going, otherwise it would turn into nut butter, which is good but not for this recipe. You're going to be amazed at how quick this recipe comes together. So if you're having unexpected company, you'll be able to make this. Pecans really smell amazing. They have almost a buttery smell. So here are my 3 cups of pecans, which I've now processed into a flour-like consistency. And I'm going to just place that aside for a second, because you see we're going to be making date paste, and you don't want to go from wet to dry, or you'll have to wipe out your food processor. It's just easier to do things in the proper order. So now, we're going to take our 2 cups of pecans, and now we're going to make the crust. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to process this time 2 cups of raw pecans into a flour-like consistency. You want to just get little crumbs, like breadcrumbs almost. You want to remember that with vegan desserts in general, you don't want to over-process. Next, I'm going to add 2 cups of pitted dates. You always want to check your dates and make sure there's no pits, or you will damage the blade. I'm using these wonderful organic dates by Date Lady. This is where I get my date syrup as well. So I'm going to add the 2 cups of pitted dates.
To the pecans that are already there.
Absolutely, yes.
Very good. This is really easy. Wow.
Really easy. You want to keep processing it until it starts to slow down, because then you know you're starting to be able to get to the point where you could form a ball. So this is a texture thing. You need to group it together in your hands so that you can actually form a ball. And then if you try to separate the ball like this, it will stay intact. Then you know you're done. Now, if you want to add vanilla, and I say if you want to because you should, it makes it better, but sometimes I'm out of it because I make my own. What I do is I take 2 vanilla beans in a high-powered blender with a cup of water, and I process it. And I actually am making vanilla water. And the reason I do that is because vanilla extract either has sugar or glycerin or alcohol, neither of which I use. So it's very easy to make your own. It lasts for 3 weeks in your refrigerator. And I'm going to add a tablespoon, but make sure you add it after it's at the stage you want it. You don't want to add the liquids before. And you can also add vanilla powder, which is great as well. And there we have the crust. I'm going to take a Springform pan. This is actually a silicone one, which I got on Amazon. It has a glass bottom. It's really nice, but you can get any silicone pan that you like. But the Springform pan works great because the sides come off and it's very easy to get it out. I'm going to actually have one already made and show you how to do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to dump the filling, the crust ingredients into the pan, and then you're going to use your hand and you're going to press. And these nut date crusts, which I've been making for years, basically if you buy a bar at the store, that's what it is dates and nuts. You don't need to pay $2 for a bar. You can be making these yourself. This is a recipe right here. You could be rolling these into little balls. You could be putting them in molds or cutting them into squares, but that's what you're getting in the store. And you can use different things like seasonings, cinnamon and nutmeg, not necessarily in this recipe, but when doing a date nut crust, the zest of a lemon or a lime, and that's it. It's really, really easy and really delicious and only has 2 ingredients. So now we're going to make the filling. I have over here 1 pound of dates, which I've soaked in 16 ounces of water. If you're familiar with my book on process, on page 65, I give you a recipe for date paste, and I tell you to take 1 pound of dates and soak it in 8 ounces of water. That's how I make date paste for most of my recipes. But in this one, we need a little bit more liquid, so it's 1 pound of dates, which have soaked in 1 cup of water. And you can see as you soak your dates, they plump up. You want to keep that soak water. That's gold. That's where all the sweetness is. You never want to soak you never want to get rid of the soak water from your dates. Now, nuts are a different story. You never want to keep that soak water. Now, if you're in a hurry, you can always soak your dates in boiling water, not in a plastic container though. So after they have soaked and plumped up, put them in the food processor fitted with the S-blade, keeping that nice soak water. We can add another tablespoon of our vanilla. You know, vanilla is the second most expensive spice in the world, second only to saffron. And it's just such a wonderful fragrance. Now, I have a food scale. I'm a professional chef, and in the bakery, everything was weighed, even things like baking powder and baking soda. Nothing was measured in cup units. This was $14. You can get a postal scale, but I really recommend, at least for desserts, that you weigh your products instead of measuring, because it can be inconsistent when you measure, because how are you going to know what a pound of dates are otherwise? You know, so now we're going to process these dates into a puree or a date paste. And that takes no time at all. You just want to make sure that it's all pureed. If for some reason you heard it slowing down or you heard that there was a pit in there, you'd want to stop it and take it out. And now to my pureed 1 pound of dates that's soaked in 16 ounces of water, I'm going to add the 3 cups of pecans that I processed into a flour. And that's it. You just need to let the food processor run a little bit till it's all incorporated. Every so often, if you like, you can take a spatula and just scrape down the sides just to make sure that all the nuts and the dates get incorporated. Oh, if you could smell this. It smells delicious.
Yes. Oh.
And we've got the dogs barking about it. That's how good it smells. that's it. And that didn't take very long at all.
No.
So now what you want to do is place it over the crust. We're going to put this in the freezer to set up. It's real important that you put it in the freezer, not just the refrigerator, and you will be able to slice it even frozen. It doesn't get completely hard. I'm going to show you a nifty little trick that I learned from my sister-in-law, Lauren. As we take the filling out, you can see that a lot of it gets stuck on the blade.
Right.
And we don't want to waste that because there's a lot of good stuff there. So all you have to do to get that last bit of filling, or anything you're making, even if it was hummus, is you put it back on the base, put the top on, pulse it quickly, and the whole blade is now clean.
Oh, what a wonderful idea.
I know.
I've always struggled with that.
Right. It's called centrifugal force.
Right.
And now look at all this filling we might have lost if we hadn't done that.
That's great.
Now, I'm not about making you guys buy fancy or expensive tools, but if you are going to make lovely desserts like this, you might want to invest in what's called an offset spatula. They're not very expensive. I got this for $7 at Walmart. You can get them at cake decorating stores and probably stores that sell cookware or bakeware, because it's just a lot easier because it's beveled, and then you need that to make it look very nice and even on the top. Don't want to waste any of this.
So tell them
stuff.
about how if people are trying to lose weight, this
Right.
is probably not
Well, yes. You know, I used to be 50 pounds heavier than I am now, which, you know, being a pastry chef was not very good for that. So you have to understand that desserts are treats, and you should have them, you know, if you can, on your birthday and special occasions. But I don't recommend you eat this every day or every meal. And this is very, very rich. It is made from whole foods, so it's nuts and dates. And, you know, dates are still about 70% sugar, but I would rather have people eat dates than any kind of sugar, real or fake, because dates at least are a whole food that are found in nature and have fiber and water and vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals and antioxidants and micronutrients. And nuts, while a healthy whole food, are very, very calorically dense as well. Dates are about 1,300 calories a pound. Nuts are anywhere from 2,800 to 3,200 calories a pound. So these are very, very calorically dense. That said, I still think it's healthier than eating anything made with real sugar, flour, and oil. You don't need a big piece to be satisfied when you're eating real food. But please realize that these are not conducive to weight loss, these desserts. That said, when people are addicted to sugar and flour the way I was, this can be very useful in the transition and getting them off sweets if they're not going to go straight away to eating, you know, kale for breakfast like I do. So we make a nice smooth top, and now the fun begins. We get to decorate the top.
Oh, yeah.
And so what I like to do is then you have, one of the things for decorating, you want to make sure you have the halves. You don't want to buy the pecan pieces, which are cheaper, which is fine for the filling and the crust, but you want the nice whole halves. And so what I do is you just make, I guess the word is concentric circles, and you line them up, and you put them around. Georgia is the state that's most known for its pecan production, I believe, and they're just a special nut, I think. They're just, you know, I'm not a big walnut fan. I know walnuts are healthy and high in omega-3 fatty acids, but pecans just taste so much better to me. They have a buttery texture. You know, I'll tell you while I'm doing this, a kind of a cute story about how this pie got developed. You know, they say that Beethoven was able to compose symphonies, some of his best work, even though he was deaf. And I recently came up with this recipe last Thanksgiving, even though I had never tasted it. Now, I'll be honest, I finally did taste it on New Year's Day of this year because I couldn't take it anymore because everybody was raving about it at True North. But what happened is my good friend Lindsay Nixon, the Happy Herbivore, invited us to her house for Thanksgiving dinner, and I asked what I could bring, and she said a pecan pie. Well, I had never made a vegan pecan pie, and I've been vegan now for about 40 years. I made one when I was a teenager, the traditional way with Caro corn syrup and eggs and flour, but it's been a really long time. And so I Googled what a pecan pie was, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't use those ingredients. And so I made this for Thanksgiving, and everybody enjoyed it. It was a real hit. And but I didn't taste it because, you know, there's an old saying, you know, I'm a food addict in recovery, and there's an old saying, don't get high on your own supply. Well, then what happened is the last 2 weeks of every year, I work at True North Health as the visiting chef, and I am responsible for making the desserts because that's the only time we get dessert there is on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. So I made probably 10 of these pies, and after a while it just got to me. It's like, oh my God. So I finally had to taste it with my mentor, Dr. Goldhammer's permission, because I worry about things like nuts and dates, sending me back a little bit on that track. And I got to tell you, it was absolutely delicious. And what was even more amazing was that it was made from 2 or 3 ingredients, and that it was really so easy to make and really quite fun, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So
wow.
This is it. Now, there's one thing that we're going to do to the top that is optional. So at True North, we're allowed to use whole dates and date paste, but we're not allowed to use date syrup.
Right.
But I am going to use it on the top because it makes it real shiny the way pecan pie is.
I saw it, and it looks really nice.
It doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to taste good no matter what.
Yes.
And, I've made this in smaller quantities, meaning this full recipe, but they have smaller pans. I've made these in tart pans, individual. It's a little bit more labor intensive, but you certainly could do that. So we're getting towards the middle, and sometimes I'll just crunch up a few pecans and put them there, or if I can get them to fit.
There's no baking at all.
No baking. All you do is pop it in the freezer overnight or for a few hours. And then what happens is you get a beautiful pie, which I'm going to show you. I made one in advance. Now this is what it looks like.
Do you serve it cold?
Yes, you serve it cold.
Okay.
And so this is what it looks like if we haven't glazed the top. And we need to freeze that because if we don't, you see it's too mushy. But what's going to happen is after you freeze it, here's one that I made yesterday. And I did glaze the top and I did decorate the middle a little bit differently. That's completely optional. Right. And so what's great about these Springform pans, and they're not expensive, is you've got a little ring here and you just open the ring and the ring pops right off. And then you have this beautiful dessert right here. Oh, and I put a little piece of parchment paper underneath because I didn't want to have to clean the ring.
Yes.
And then you can peel it right off. And look at that. Look how beautiful that is. Absolutely. I could eat the whole thing. I would say you could easily get 20 slices out of this because remember, it's very, very rich.
Yes.
And the thing is it even though it's frozen, it's not frozen solid, so you can eat it right now, or you could bring it to room temperature for a little bit, but don't just defrost it. Right. Keep it cold. So let me show you, if you wanted to glaze the top, how you would do that. Very, very easy to make. Might be the easiest of all the desserts. There we go. And now, I could show them how to cut it if you like, but then I can't give it away to somebody as a present. Now, at True North, as I mentioned, we're not allowed to use date syrup, only date paste and whole dates. The only reason I glazed it is because traditional pecan pie from the corn syrup looks very shiny. If you did want to use it, I'm using date syrup from I Love Date Lady. It's organic. It's made from only dates. You need about 2 to 4 tablespoons. But what I just do instead of measuring is I just squirt it over the top, again in these concentric circles. And then if I had a pastry brush, I would use it. I don't, so I'm just going to use my finger. And it's almost like I'm glazing the top and filling in the cracks. It's just that makes it more traditional looking, but it is completely optional. The taste is completely fine without it. I never tasted it this way. I tasted it the True North way. There we go. It just makes it look more like what people are used to. And you just want to just move your finger around and go over every pecan and nook and cranny so to keep it shiny. And then you pop it in the freezer, and then when it's frozen solid, you can take the ring off, you can slice it, and that's it. And this is a recipe I'm very proud of because really sometimes simplicity is best, and people just can't believe that it's just 2 or 3 ingredients if you count the vanilla, dates, and pecans. The world's healthiest pecan pie, no baking, no oven required, so it's
very good.
Very little. All you needed was a food processor. Look at that. Beautiful.
Thank you. Oh,
very good.
Look at that.
So here's the one we just made in just a few minutes, and here's the one that was made before. And I know you'll enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Chef AJ.
Thanks.
I'm sure that people will really enjoy these for many years.
I hope you enjoy. Please let me know if you do.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.